This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Welcome back to Success and Excess, where vision meets velocity, powered by GrowthX, the ultimate growth partner for med spas, ready to accelerate revenue and scale past 7 figures. We've supported over 20 med spas scale past 7 figures and have generated more than $100 million in revenue through strategic marketing, automation, and patient flow systems. If you're looking for a strategic partner in visibility, growth, and revenue acceleration, visit GrowthX Marketing. Now, today's guest. If you've been watching the aesthetic space, you've heard of Plasma MedSpa, a premier regenerative practice in Weston, Florida. It's led by Tal Raizer, a board-certified NP specialized in regenerative medicine for aesthetics, sexual wellness, and musculoskeletal health. From the cutting-edge vampire facial and IV therapy to PRP for hair restoration and sexual wellness, Plasma is redefining what modern med spas can be. It blends emergency room precision with aesthetic artistry, and her clinic's growth journey is packed with insights for everyone scaling in this niche. Let's dive in. So, Tal, welcome. Tell us about your background and what led you from the emergency and orthopedic care into founding Plasma MedSpa.
Thank you for having me. My name is Tal. I'm a nurse practitioner, and my background, like you said, was in emergency room nursing and ICU nursing. When I went and got my master's and then finally my doctorate, I did start out in orthopedic surgery. I did that for about 9 years. And when I did work in orthopedic surgery, I did a lot of joint injections, musculoskeletal injections with plasma for muscle pain, joint pain, tendon and ligament problems. And so when I decided that I wanted to go into aesthetics, I really wanted to bring that passion of mine of using regenerative medicine and our own plasma into aesthetics. And so that's how Plasma MedSpa came about.
Interesting. That's powerful. So was there a defining moment, a patient success, or like some type of breakthrough where you realized Plasma Meds would be something truly special and something that you could grow for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at myself and probably my group of friends and acquaintances that I knew. And to be honest, before I got into aesthetics, I was kind of nervous about it. And that's really because we see bad aesthetics. We don't really see good aesthetics. And so I think a lot of people that are nervous about it or just don't have a lot of education about it, want more natural things, including plasma, which obviously is completely natural. It's your own blood. So I really thought that there was kind of like an untapped market. Not that a lot of med spas don't do plasma, but just kind of making it the focus I thought was, going to be something that I'm personally passionate about and that I really believe in, and then also that people would be interested in doing.
Awesome. Plasma's tone is modern, it's high touch, from advanced tech to warm hospitality. Walk us through how you designed the experience from initial contact to consultation to treatment. And really, one of the things I want to touch base on what you just spoke of, good med spas, bad med spas. There's people that are practicing good aesthetics and there's people practicing bad aesthetics. What do you describe as bad aesthetics, and how can our listeners understand and identify and hopefully, not fall victim to bad aesthetics?
Yeah, so I think touching on your first point, customer service really starts before the patient comes in. So really making sure, if someone calls me or texts me wanting a consultation, I really try to figure out what their goals are, what they're interested in as much as you can, from having a conversation versus looking at them and doing like a full-on assessment, and really making sure that I'm the right place for them, because one, everyone is busy. I don't want to waste anyone's time. But two, right, like if I'm already matching up, with what they're looking for, their goals, then the chance of success is going to be much higher, right? I always want to make sure that when I do my consultations that I'm honest with the patient and I say, hey, this is what we can achieve, this is what we cannot achieve, this is the unknown. Because again, having honest conversations with patients about what they're looking to do and what we can and cannot do with the services that I offer, I think again, just trying to match expectations. When it comes to good and bad aesthetics, again, everyone has their own opinion, right? Everyone is able to have their own opinion about aesthetics, right? Like some, and I always use this example. I had a patient ask me how much for 3 syringes of filler in the lips. And I said, well, I'm not the place for you, right? So, and that might be fine for other people, but medically, right, when we look ethics and what we're trying to do with the patient, right? The syringe of the filler in the lips is not something that I ethically would ever do to a patient. So yeah, I mean, again, when we look at bad aesthetics, for me, like my goal for my patients is what I think of natural aesthetics or undetectable aesthetics, right? We're anti-aging, we're tweaking a little bit, we're just making enough of a difference so that we're happy with the result, but we look natural. If someone walked past us down the street, they wouldn't say, oh, she's had her lips done, she's had her cheeks done, she's had her jaw or her chin done, right? And that's really my goal for my patients. And so I think sometimes there has to be synergy, right, between the patient and the injector, right? We have to have the same goals. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to establish here. Not to say that there aren't, really great injectors that want to do more than that, and that's fine. That's just not what I do or what I aim to do for my patients. Yeah, so really establishing that kind of balance, between myself as an injector and my goals, and then the patient's goals, I think is really helpful. And then also, the people who are nervous to receive aesthetics because they see bad aesthetics, really educating them on what is achievable, right, with natural, like more natural or undetectable aesthetics.
Okay. So, in that aspect, you're a professional, you're a trained nurse practitioner, have, experience in various practices of medicine. Now, if, let's say, uninformed potential client comes in, not to your med spa, but let's say another med spa, and they want to avoid bad aesthetics, because we hear a lot nowadays where people are having procedures done from non-licensed professionals, or maybe they might be you know, they're not even a RN, maybe they're a CNA, maybe they're somebody just have done some microdermablation, and now, they got their hands on a tool and somebody's letting them work with it, because people cut corners. Hiring an NP or a medical director or RN to do your injections or even do your procedures can be a lot more costly than if you just hire somebody that's a CNA. And we see that, you're in Florida, you're in South Florida. I mean, it's pretty well known how good the aesthetics can be in Florida and also how bad it can be.
Mhm.
So, what can they do to kind of get the telltale signs and say, hey, this is not the place where I really want to have my, medical procedures done?
Yeah, I think some of it is education, right? So, like, consumers are not 100% educated, and they shouldn't be because they're not experts in the field, right? But in the state of Florida, you have to be a nurse practitioner, PA, or medical doctor to inject. Now, the Board of Nursing is allowing certain RNs to inject with medical supervision. A doctor has to be there, but they do have to petition the Board of Nursing for that. And even in my own area, right? Even in Weston, there are, injectors who are not licensed. I am not, the person to go and report them or anything. But I think from the consumer standpoint, right, just when they go somewhere, um, you know, well, one, they have to care, right? Like if they don't care, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if they do care, then definitely asking, for their credentials, making sure they have their healthcare establishment license, making sure that they do have a compliant medical director. So again, in the state of Florida, you have to have one that's a plastic surgeon or dermatologist. If it's not, if it's an NP or PA that owns the practice. Yeah. So just asking those types of questions, maybe asking, how long they've been injecting, if they take continuing education, right? Those are all things that are important. And I know a lot of people don't, necessarily do that, but that's something that I would recommend. Now, like you said, it's really expensive to run a legitimate business. And so I think looking at cost as a sense of, and not always, but looking at cost as a sense of like legitimacy can be helpful if they're not going to do all that rest of the work, right? Like investigating the injector and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, most people, if they're legitimately buying from the pharmaceutical companies like, Galderma, Allergan, MERS, all these companies, we generally pay about the same price. Obviously, the more, you can get like bulk discounts and stuff like that for franchises. But if the price is cheap, that means that something is off, right?
Something's
Like
off.
something is off, right? Because we're all paying about the same prices. Again, I'm sure there's quite some variability when it comes to bulk discounts, but if it's cheaper, right, they're either not making money off of it, right, and they're banking on volume, or two, it's not a legitimate product. And so when it comes to these things, again, like I care about these things, right? And so that's why I'm running a legitimate business. But if people don't care, obviously there's nothing I can do. but I care what people would put onto my face.
Okay, okay. So Tal, from what I get, you're running a holistic med spa in the sense that you're running regenerative medicine that is natural in the sense that you're using plasma, and you want to make sure that that whole rejuvenation, the vitality that you bring back to your patients at the same time is not going to cause them any long lasting negative effects, because you see like a lot of people that get those facial uplifts or any of those procedures, you notice a couple of years later they are either sagging or generally it ends up looking a little bit worse than they were from the beginning. So that whole approach, even though it's kind of going against the grain in the med spa industry, because you're at some point in time you're closing a lot of doors, but I think so many more patients would be so much more appreciative of what you're doing because you actually bring that empathy to the business. You bring that care, that bedside manner that you generally don't see in med spas. Usually it's, you come in, you get your service, you get out, there's no client relationship building. There's no make sure that they're informed in what they're doing. And whether you do it or not, you can refer them to somebody else, but giving that care and that attention to them, knowing this really puts you on a higher level on not just quality of care, but just quality of business ethics altogether. And as we transition into, we heard about the services, but before we transition into scaling your business, let's talk about where would you say, or what would you say are your top three services that you offer and why are they your favorite?
Sure. So just to clarify, I do traditional Botox and fillers just like any other med spa. I just, when it comes to certain concerns and goals, I do tend to recommend more like the plasma procedures versus, the traditional fillers. But I do both. I like both. I think both have great results. It's just a matter of like what the patient is looking for. So I would say my most popular services are Botox. That's a crowd pleaser. I do a lot of the what's called the Dermagel PRP filler, which is kind of like PRF Easy Gel, if anyone's ever heard of that one. But we use PRP instead of PRF, and the studies do show that it does last longer than the PRF. So that's something that I've been doing a lot since I opened my practice. Excuse me. And then I also do, like I said, plasma injections for musculoskeletal and sexual health. That has been pretty popular as well, just because I got trained through the Cellular Medicine Association. And so, I'm one of the only people in my area that does that type of work. And so I think that has, I guess from word of mouth traveled. So that's been great.
Okay. Now we see in the med spa space increasing, like, they have machines like Mcella that helps you
Mhm.
do the Kegels, like 10,000 in an hour. So, sexual wellness now is a very important topic and it's a big moneymaker. I mean, it's going to
Mhm.
be, almost a $20 billion annual industry. And does your services also help women or does it help men or is it both applicable? How does that work out?
Yeah, so it's both. So I do the O shot and the P shot, which is where we inject plasma both or either into the vagina or the penis for sexual health. It does help to address sexual arousal, libido, and women also urinary incontinence. And so, yeah, it is something that, again, just like anything else, when we look at health and we look at dysfunction of any kind or any real problem, even aesthetics, right? Like it's a full on right? It's not like a one and done, right? Like you can have an O shot, you can have a P shot, but like, are you smoking? Are you eating healthy? Are you sleeping? Right? Like all these things that definitely factor in. So nothing is like a one time quick fix, but it is something that I definitely discuss with my patients in the sense of, okay, well, you need to sleep. You need to stop drinking alcohol every day, right? Like you need to stop smoking, all these things because it's not just a service, right? Like I'm not just providing a service, I'm also providing education. And so again, if I want my patients to be happy and for them to have the best results, then I definitely need, to counsel them on all the other aspects of their lifestyle.
Very nice, very nice. That was quite informative. So, and I apologize earlier. So you're not just holistic. So you are taking the
No.
med spa space from A to Z, and
Yes.
you really, that's what I love talking to you, Tal. In the fact of, you are highly trained. You are not just a medical professional. You're a highly trained medical professional. Where I've worked with many med spas where some of the owners, maybe they were a nurse 20 years ago and, now they're opening up a business and most of the staff are just, like I said, CNAs or estheticians. Running a business like that, considering that there are a lot of risks in aesthetics, right? People don't understand that the risks involved could be life threatening. It could be damaging for the rest of your life, just physically, emotionally, based on how it could happen. But managing all that, you've been in business for over a year now, correct? And you're scaling your business. You're currently doing, I believe, a little bit over 30,000 a month, where most med spas in their first year are, they're still struggling to figure out how to get clients through the door. They're paying, absorbent fees on their machines. So it seems like you're on a path to really scale. So how do you balance that out, and what obstacles did you face, and how have you solved them, and how do you still solve them today?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't come. So when I went from orthopedic surgery to aesthetics, I literally was like, I'm going to open up a med spa. I didn't really have any formal training in aesthetics. I took all the training courses, but then I mentored with someone for a year. And then I opened up my business. So I didn't have like a patient following, I didn't have that sort of, brand recognition or, like face from people who I had been treating for years. So it's really, I built this from the ground up. A lot of it is networking. I try to network like once or twice a week, obviously digital marketing in the sense of like social media marketing, and really just putting a lot of emphasis on my patient experience, because I really do believe that when people, patients are really happy, that word of mouth will travel. And obviously that takes time. So, it is something that the word of mouth part is obviously slower than like anything else, but I do believe that those are my best patients, right? Because again, if we're focusing on the patient experience from before the patient is even coming in, making sure we're not, like wasting a patient's time if we know that they're not a great fit for the practice, right? Like all these things I do think end up paying off, right? In the long run, in the sense of like patient referrals, good reviews, things like that.
Yeah, they're absolutely vital to the growth of the business. And, making sure that your patients are well equipped knowledge wise and understanding what they're getting into can help go such a long way. And that referral system, I mean, referrals, yes, it takes a long time. And you built this literally from scratch. I know a lot of people, they bring a following from another med spa and then they start, or they partner with a friend that's been working in another, and they kind of pull together who they know over the years. And you're building a strong following just on your own, and that whole referral network, I mean, that integrity that you have, where you can tell a patient, hey, I don't honestly offer that service here, but you can go here. That builds so much trust in that patient that if anybody needs something that you offer, they're going to send it your way, because it's that thing where you didn't just, if you can't service them, at the end of the day, you're not going to give them any direction, where you're actually still helping them. So you talked about digital marketing, right? You're working on social media. What tools or automations have made the biggest difference in streamlining your operations? Because I believe you have how many people working with you currently?
It's just me. I have a part-time person that comes in just to help me with bookkeeping, and then a part-time patient care coordinator that I literally just hired last week. So, but most of it is just me. So I'm answering all the phone calls. I'm answering all the text messages. I'm answering all the DMs, all the emails. I'm scheduling most of the appointments. I'm doing all the follow-up. So yeah, it's mostly just me.
So she's wearing every hat in the business, basically.
Yeah. I clean
Awesome.
the office. I do inventory. Yeah, but again, as my business is growing, I'm noticing, right, that like forming relationships with other businesses, other people, like people in the community is really important to building my business and growing it. And I am the best person to sell myself, even though I always joke that I'm not a salesperson, but I am honest. Again, hopefully honesty pays off in the long run. So yeah, I mean, so that's why I'm trying to kind of bring some automation into my business to really help me to free up some of my time that is spent on admin, to just be out in the community and be able to bring more patients in. So I actually just this week set up my CRM. My patient care coordinator is going to help me with some marketing campaigns, text and email campaigns. And then, like I said, I do have a marketing team that comes and helps me film for social media. And I have gotten some traction from social media, like some patients that come to me from TikTok and Instagram, which is nice. And then I've also worked with like a few influencers. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do what I can with the budget that I have.
Absolutely. And that's, that it's smart that you're doing that. A lot of people, like I see, there's always this, I guess, catastrophic moment in med spas when you're working with them where, let's say they get a machine. Let's say hypothetically they're doing laser hair removal. And they see that this month they made, I don't know, 30,000 off the machine. And quickly they run the mathematics in their head and they're like, if I get 2, 3 more machines, I'll make $90,000 a month. And they go all in. I used to have a client that went all in. He bought 10 machines and his monthly fee every month just to keep the machines. So basically he called it his mortgage. Each machine was a mortgage, basically, right? He's talking about anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 just in machine costs monthly. And it makes up if you can reach that potential. But when you're scaling your business, there's plateaus and there's phases. So let's say if you're making $1,000 this month, well, you're not really considered a $50,000 a month business unless you've made consistently 48, 52, 57, 61, 49, and then you can say, hey, I'm at 50. So but a lot of these people, they feel like they're going to lose money by not getting the more machines because they're like, wow, I made 30,000, but if I had another machine, I could have made 60. And if I had two more, I could have made 90. But then they have the months where, okay, they went from, 60 and now they're back down to 28 or 25 because
Sure.
there's some political problem or just people are, just there's problems or it's
It's
slowing
summer.
down. It's summer. Summer
Yeah.
is the worst time of the year for med spas. People are
Yes,
going
it
on
is.
vacation. Kids are out. I mean, I think in every med spa I've worked with from Australia, Dubai, the United States, Canada, summertime generally is always that lull period. And you really learn where your foundational point is and who are your best customers. Because the ones that are stick it through even in the summer months are kind of, that's your bread and butter customers. So that's great. So you're working on automation. And that's, one thing that we talk about in AI nowadays for med spas is automation is changing the game because it allows you, let's say, Tal, you're an independent owner, one person running the show, right? If automation wasn't around and wasn't a tool that you could use, making the networking events would be hard. Being able to do the social media posting would be hard because at the end of the day, you look at it and you're like, well, I still have to do invoicing. I have to do inventory. I have to make sure all the messages are responded to. I have to make sure they're responded to on time. And then at the end of the day, you look at the other messages and it just snowballs into you end up working for the business and the business doesn't work for you.
Yes.
So awesome. You're working on social media. You have a marketing team that comes with you from time to time. Your patient coordinator is going to help you out. So which CRM are you currently using?
High level.
High level. Awesome. It's a great CRM. Definitely, I would tell anybody to get high level. It works fantastically. And it does exactly everything you need, especially in the med spa space, whether you're a single owner like Tal, or if you have multiple locations and, 20, 30 staff members, it can really handle your business and streamline operations to the point where, you can really do what you do best time monetization wise, which is providing treatments and going out there and drumming up business.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. Were there any marketing gambles that surprised you, successes or flops? I think, we had talked earlier last time and you had somewhat of a bad experience with running ads. What about that?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm on my third marketing team in a year and a half.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. So, I
Sorry to hear
mean,
that.
yeah, it is what it is.
It happens.
But the first one I hired from the first two I hired from recommendations from other people. The first one was so bad, so bad. I mean, they did my website and there were so many like spelling and grammar mistakes. And I was just like, who is editing this? Like, what is happening here? Anyway, so that one was a no. And then my second one one was really good. I had them for over a year, but they were not local. And so I really like, it's hard for me to film myself and do a good job, while I'm injecting. So I really needed someone here to like be present and do the video aspect of social media. So I switched to someone more local. And then they come twice a month to film me when I have patients, which is really helpful. But I'm learning a lot about social media and marketing. It's interesting because I think as a medical provider, it's always really hard to kind of switch that brain, right? Like I'm a medical provider. I'm not like a social media star. I'm not an influencer. So I'm more comfortable, doing the education aspect, right? Like talking about what I'm doing, the benefits, contraindications, things like that. I'm not so comfortable doing like the dances and the, viral videos and all that stuff. So, but I'm starting to learn that I guess it's important and people like that stuff. So I don't know. I guess you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, but I did run some ads with the second company that I hired. And then I spent about $10,000 and I didn't get any decent leads from it. So yeah, that was definitely not the best.
Yes.
And to say that I've been kind of, I want to say the word tainted, but I don't think that's the right word I'm looking for, right? Kind of like
Jada?
discouraged, I guess, from doing ads in the future, for now at least, just because I had a bad experience with it. And not because I had a bad experience with the company, just a bad experience from running the ads and then not getting anything from it, right? So, yeah, so I think, again, like everyone, when they own a business or when they're trying something new, right? Like it's all a learning experience. And so you have to see what works, what's not working. And then it also depends, I think, on the person, right? Like I'm a solo practitioner. I'm the one person handling this. So if leads do come in, like, do I have the time to properly respond to them, right? So like I think if people are looking into marketing, right, they also have to have the infrastructure, the policies, the procedures, the SOPs, right? The CRM to be able to actually do something with it versus, just, oh yes, well, we got a lead. Okay, well, what does that mean, right?
What are
It's
you
it's
doing?
not yeah, it's not helpful until they're in your office and paying you. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, definitely learning as I go.
Well, I mean, that's amazing that, you've come so far in this year alone and plus. And the thing is, there's horror stories from so many med spas where they run ads or they run social media or they're working with companies that don't give them the quality that they should have. And one of the things I tell everybody is, you know, we work as a growth partner. And as a growth partner, we work with our med spa specifically hand in hand to make sure that we're building a roadmap to get to their goals. And if their goal is, let's say, in your situation, you're going from 30 to 50, what does that look like? What type of infrastructure needs to be in place? When are we going to have, an overflow? Because sometimes what you don't want to do is, let's say, if you can only take on, let's say, hypothetically, 20 patients. I'm just going to use a random number. But
Hmm.
if you end up getting 50 leads, there's called
Hmm.
a negative impact effect, where now if you can only take on 20, there's 30 out there that their first experience with you is negative because they've been told, hey, I can't take you on right now, or you're going to have to wait a month or two. And for you, it sounds good that you're booked, but that's where the growth partner comes in and they balance that out and they make sure that we're not throwing away any potential clients by turning them away. We're
Hmm.
making sure that that faucet is pouring out just enough leads that you can handle. And when we build that infrastructure for the next phase, let's say from 50 to 100,000, we have an infrastructure in place to know, hey, we can handle from 50 to
Hmm.
100,000 a month clean. And when we get to 90,000, we start preparing for the next phase. So you're never in a position where your business is either losing opportunities, because that's the worst. Because, if somebody's coming to your med spa and they don't, let's say they put in a form, or let's say they called, or they, filled out an ad and they don't get a response, or they get told that there's no time for them, I can guarantee you 99 out of 99 times, or 99 out of 100 times, they're not going to come back to you. And if somebody brings it up, they're going to be like, yeah, I tried them, but they weren't available. And it's just going to be that kind of, insane aspect. It's going to be a jaded aspect to them where they're not going to come back. So it's very careful that people understand what is that funnel process. When people come in as a lead, if they call you, You need to respond via SMS. If you can't pick up the phone because you're in a procedure, make sure you have an automated system responding back within 30 seconds. Because if you don't answer in that time frame, either from an SMS response or something of that nature, they're going to call the next med spa down on the list.
I
And
agree.
now it's a statistic that the first person that picks up has a 50% chance of turning that person into a client because they have intent. They're calling you for a reason. And if you can say, hey, yeah, we can fit you in Tuesday at 3 o'clock for the service you're looking for, it's very hard for them to be like, oh, no, never mind. Let me go somewhere else, right? Because they have their answer. So, I want to ask you another thing. So you've been building this, you've been growing it. You found, you found a good flow in your motion. Your engine is going. What macro trends do you see shaping the aesthetics and wellness space in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, like what I set out to do was focus on what's called undetectable aesthetics. And I think that's really coming into the forefront with more biostimulation in the sense of Sculptra, Radiesse, right? PRP, filler, or PDGF, now exosomes, skin boosters, things like that, really kind of focusing on the person as a whole versus like, oh, let's do a lip filler, right? Let's do a cheek filler. And that's something that I explain to my patients, right? In the sense of like, we cannot stop aging. Aesthetics is, I always tell people, it's like brushing your teeth. You're not going to brush your teeth one time and have clean teeth for the rest of your life. Aesthetics is the same thing, right? Like, you're not going to do a lip filler one time and look amazing for the rest of your life. Just like anything else, right? It's upkeep, it's maintenance, right? So these are things that you really have to consider. Again, are you a smoker? Do you exercise? Do you sleep? Like, all these things affect the way that you look. So it's not just about, can I put a syringe of filler in your cheek, right? Like that's not what it is. So yeah, so kind of more like of a wholesome approach to aesthetics versus just like, oh, this is the service, this is the cost. And then really trying to get patients, I hope, right? Like, we're going in a direction where patients are going to care, like we talked about, bad aesthetics versus good aesthetics, that patients are going to care about, and that's my hope, right? That patients are going to care about, right? Like what we're putting in their face, the training that the person has, and then also like, again, a wholesome experience in the sense of like, okay, well, yeah, I really wanted lip filler, but I went to Plasma MedSpa and they were like, oh yeah, you can get lip filler, but you have a recessed chin, right? So like, let's bring out your chin and so that we can balance your face, so that, right, like it's more of a wholesome approach versus just like a one and done. Yeah, so those are, I think, the things that I'm seeing and really trying to, I guess, impact in my industry.
Amazing, amazing. So we've gotten a lot of information from you today, Tal. So now we're going to go into the lightning round. It's going to be some little quick questions, ask you about, just quick. So what's your
Okay.
go-to signature treatment at Plasma?
PRP filler.
PRP filler. Underrated service every med spa should offer.
I would say chemical peels.
Awesome.
PRP, it's your own blood, not someone else's. I get that a lot. And actually, interestingly enough, I know you said it's a lightning round, but I do have something to say about this. Recently, John Oliver, who's a comedian, had an episode about med spas, and I actually lost a client consultation over it. So that's why I'm really passionate about talking about it. But he talked about basically the lack of regulation of med spas, which, you and I talked about earlier in the sense of like, yeah, it's a CNA, or I had my patient yesterday who went to a facial and the lady was talking to her about doing her Botox. It's so basically he was just talking about the lack of regulation and how, like, you could go to a med spa and get, like a construction worker injecting your face with, no medical supervision whatsoever, which I agree. I totally agree with everything he said. And he's actually hilarious. But I did lose a patient consultation over it. And it's interesting because, we talked about, right, like what or patients need to do in order to ensure that they're going to like a licensed place that's legit and all that stuff. So yeah, I guess maybe just that not all med spas are bad
Yeah.
or illegal. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I mean, you're right. What John Oliver said, there is a very little regulation. And I know we're in the lightning round, but, I recently saw a horror story where, a doctor who is doing a Brazilian butt lift ended up, I guess, I don't know what kind of doctor he was, but he injected her with concrete. And now the lady's, I mean, she had massive infections where they had to take
Sure.
out like chunks of her like actual muscle mass. And
God.
it's actually very sad.
Yeah, it's a
So,
nightmare.
two last questions. Advice you give your younger nurse practitioner self.
That's a good one. Maybe that, learning is a lifelong process and that, you don't always have to feel like you know everything, and that you can learn things, and that you can rely on your medical network. I would say that.
Very good. Last one. So this is a good one because it's Friday. What's your favorite way to unwind after a long week?
I'm a mom and I have 2 little kids, and I'm also a part-time professor, so I don't really have time. But I do like to exercise. I bake sourdough from scratch every week, and I like to read.
Very nice. Reading
Yeah,
is great, baking is great, and exercise is great. So you're staying healthy
yeah,
and you practice what you preach.
I do. I definitely do.
Well, I'll say, Tal, this has been incredible. Your journey and insights will truly resonate with med spa owners aiming for excellence. For our listeners, where can they connect with you and learn more?
Yeah, so again, I'm located in Weston, Florida. They can always come visit me. But on socials, all my socials are at Plasma MedSpa. Email is contact@plasmamedspa, and then our website is plasmamedspa.com.
PlasmaMedSpa.com, guys. And for everyone listening, if this episode inspired you, share it with a peer, leave us a 5-star review. Let's grow this community. Until next time, keep building, scaling, and stay radiant.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.